The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was filled with hundreds of alien species from across the stars. Lights of every color danced across the ceiling as representatives from ancient civilizations took their seats. In the center of this grand chamber stood Ambassador Laura Mitchell, a woman of 63 years who had given her entire life to serving humanity among the stars. She stood alone. For 300 years, humanity had served the Galactic Council as their protectors. Human soldiers had died on frozen moons and burning deserts. Human ships had patrolled the dangerous edges of known space where pirates and monsters lurked. Human blood had been spilled to keep these great alien civilizations safe, while they enjoyed their art and their music and their endless debates about philosophy. Admiral Daniel Carter watched the proceedings from his ship in orbit above the council station. He was an old man now, with gray hair and tired eyes that had seen too many battles. The holographic display in front of him showed every detail of the chamber below. He could see Laura standing there, waiting for the council to speak. High Magistrate Torvan of the Valari rose from his seat. He was tall and beautiful, his body made of living crystal that caught the light and scattered it into rainbows. The Valari were the oldest species in the council, and they believed this made them superior to everyone else. Torvan looked down at Laura with something that might have been pity or might have been contempt. The human delegation has requested a permanent seat on the High Council, Torvan announced. His voice was like wind chimes, beautiful but cold. After careful consideration, this request is denied. A murmur went through the chamber. Some species looked uncomfortable. Others nodded in agreement. While we acknowledge that humans have contributed to peacekeeping efforts, Torvan continued, your species lacks the evolutionary refinement necessary for such responsibility. You are young. You are violent. You have not earned the wisdom that comes with age. Laura did not shout. She did not cry. She simply stood there and let the insult wash over her like cold water. She had heard these words before. Every human who had ever stood in this chamber had heard them. May I speak? She asked quietly. Torvan waved his crystalline hand. You may. Laura took a breath. Last year, the Corinth system was attacked by the Drexian Confederacy. How many Valari ships came to defend it? Silence. None. Laura answered her own question. How many Telmari soldiers fought to protect those colonies? None. How many Zelkathi, or Korvan, or any of the great ancient species of this council lifted a single finger to help? Still silence. But humans came. We sent 40 ships and 12,000 soldiers. The battle lasted 3 weeks. When it was over, we had won. The colonies were saved, and 6,000 human men and women never came home. She paused and looked around the chamber at all the alien faces watching her. At the Void Breach, when the dimensional tear threatened to swallow an entire sector, human scientists found the solution. Human engineers built the device that sealed it, and human pilots flew the mission that closed it, knowing they would not survive. Her voice remained calm and steady. On Epsilon 7, when the Ravager swarms descended on a peaceful farming world, no one came to help except humanity. We fought for 8 months. We lost 30,000 soldiers. 30,000 families received messages telling them that their sons and daughters and mothers and fathers would never return. Laura looked directly at Torvan. And for all of this, what did we ask? Did we ask for tribute? Did we demand that you worship us? Did we try to conquer your worlds? Or steal your resources? She shook her head slowly. We asked only for respect. We asked only to be treated as equals. And today, once again, you have told us that we are not worthy. Torvan shifted uncomfortably on his seat. The humans have been compensated according to standard mercenary rates. Your service has been paid for. Something changed in Laura's eyes at that moment. Admiral Carter, watching from orbit, saw it happen. It was like watching a door close forever. Mercenaries, Laura repeated softly. After 300 years, that is still all we are to you. Tools to be used and paid, and forgotten. She was quiet for a long moment. The entire chamber seemed to hold its breath. Very well, she finally said. Without another word, Laura turned and walked toward the exit. Her footsteps echoed in the sudden silence. No one tried to stop her. No one called after her. She simply walked away, and the doors closed behind her. Admiral Carter immediately opened a communication channel. "Ambassador, are you all right?" Laura's face appeared on his screen. She looked tired, but there was a strange peace in her eyes. "Get me a priority channel to Earth Command, Daniel. It is time." "Are you sure?" "I have never been more sure of anything in my life." Within 6 hours, the order went out to every human ship, station, and colony in Council space. The message was simple. Come home. Leave everything. Come home now. There were no angry speeches broadcast across the galaxy. There were no threats or demands or ultimatums. Humanity simply began to leave. Quietly. Peacefully. Without fuss. Trade ships finished their current deliveries and then departed for Earth space. Military vessels withdrew from their patrol routes. Scientists packed up their equipment and said goodbye to confused alien colleagues. Diplomats closed their offices and booked passage home. Within 48 hours, the withdrawal was complete. Torvon received the news while preparing for his evening meditation. A junior aide interrupted him with a datapad showing the movement of human ships across the galaxy. "They are all leaving," the aide said, her voice trembling. "Every single one." "Let them go," Torvon replied with a wave of his hand. "They will return when they realize how much they need the Council's protection and trade." But as the days passed, no human ships returned. No human ambassadors requested meetings. No human merchants appeared at trading stations. Humanity had simply walked away from the galaxy, and in the silence they left behind, something terrible was beginning to wake. 3 months passed after humanity's departure, and High Magistrate Torvon began to notice small problems appearing everywhere he looked. It started with the trade routes. For centuries, human patrol ships had kept the shipping lanes safe from pirates and raiders. Merchants of every species had grown comfortable traveling anywhere they wished without fear. But now those patrol ships were gone, and the pirates had noticed. The first major attack happened along the Outer Rim. A convoy of Telmari merchant vessels was ambushed by raiders from the uncharted regions. The ships were carrying medical supplies and rare minerals worth billions of credits. All 7 ships were destroyed. No survivors were found. Counselor Sereth of the Telmari came to Torvon's office with the news. Sereth was a strange creature by human standards. With 4 eyes and 6 arms, and skin the color of autumn leaves, he had always been one of the more thoughtful members of the Council. "This is only the beginning," Sereth warned. "Without human patrols, every criminal in the galaxy knows they can attack without consequence." Torvon made a dismissive gesture. "We will hire other species to patrol the routes. The Corvan are excellent warriors. The Corvan only fight to repay honor debts. They will not serve as mercenaries." "I already asked." "Then the Zelkathi." "The Zelkathi are pacifists. They have not built a warship in 10,000 years." Torvon felt a flicker of irritation. Surely someone in this vast galaxy can protect a simple trade route. Sereth's 4 eyes blinked slowly. "The humans could. The humans did. For 300 years, they asked for nothing but respect in return, and we refused to give it." While the Council debated solutions that never came, life on Earth continued peacefully. Admiral Daniel Carter had retired to a small farmhouse in the mountains of Montana. The land had been in his family for generations, and he had always dreamed of returning to it someday. Now that day had finally arrived. He spent his mornings working in the garden, growing vegetables and flowers with his own hands, instead of commanding fleets of starships. In the afternoons, he would sit on his porch and watch the sky, remembering the stars he had sailed between for so many years. Laura Mitchell visited him one warm summer evening. She had returned to teaching history at a university in Boston, sharing the stories of humanity's journey among the stars with young people who had never seen an alien world. "Do you miss it?" she asked, sitting beside him on the porch. Daniel thought about the question for a long moment. "I miss the good parts. The camaraderie. The purpose. Knowing that what we did mattered. And the bad parts? Being called primitive by species who could not defend themselves without our help. Being treated like hired muscle by civilizations that considered us barely intelligent. Watching my friends die for people who did not even know their names. He shook his head slowly. No. I do not miss that. They sat in comfortable silence as the sun set behind the mountains. Back in Council space, the situation was growing worse by the day. The Drexian Confederacy had always been aggressive, but humanity's presence had kept them in check. The Drexians feared human warships, feared human soldiers, feared the strange, fierce creatures who seemed to love battle the way other species loved music or art. But with humanity gone, that fear evaporated like morning mist. Drexian ships began appearing in disputed territories. At first, they claimed to be conducting peaceful surveys. Then they started building outposts. Then military bases. The smaller species in those regions sent desperate messages to the Council, begging for protection. The Council sent strongly worded diplomatic protests. The Drexians ignored them completely. On the Valari homeworld, Torvan received 17 separate requests for emergency meetings in a single day. Representatives from dozens of species were demanding to know what the Council planned to do about the growing threats. He had no answer to give them. In desperation, the Council decided to send diplomatic missions to Earth. Perhaps the humans could be convinced to return. Perhaps they simply needed time to calm down. Perhaps they could be offered better payment or special privileges. The first mission arrived at Earth 6 months after humanity's withdrawal. The delegation was led by a senior Valari diplomat named Christine, who had once worked closely with Laura Mitchell. The humans received them politely. They were given comfortable quarters and excellent food. They were taken on tours of human cities and museums. They were shown the art galleries and concert halls and universities where humans studied everything from mathematics to poetry. But when Christine asked about returning to Council space, the humans simply smiled and changed the subject. "We appreciate your visit," the human foreign minister told her. "We wish the Council well, but our decision is final. We will focus on our own development and defense from now on." "But you are needed," Christine protested. "The pirates, the Drexians, the countless threats that only your species can handle." The foreign minister's smile did not waver. "For 300 years, we handled those threats. For 300 years, we bled and died while the Council debated whether we deserved basic respect. You had centuries to treat us as partners. You chose not to." Christine returned to the Council with empty hands and a heavy heart. 16 more diplomatic missions followed over the next year. Each received the same polite welcome. Each was given gifts of human art and literature. Each was sent home with kind words and firm refusals. On Earth, the humans watched the chaos spreading through Council space with mixed emotions. Some felt satisfaction that those who had scorned them were finally learning what humanity's absence meant. Others felt sadness at the suffering that could have been prevented, but none of them wanted to go back. And then the deep space sensors detected something that changed everything. Something massive was moving through the void between galaxies. Something hungry. Something that humanity had fought many times before. The Ravagers were returning. And this time, humanity was not there to stop them. The warning came from an automated sensor station at the edge of known space. The station had been built by humans 50 years ago and had been maintained by human engineers until the withdrawal. Now it stood alone in the darkness, faithfully watching the void for threats that most species preferred not to think about. The data it transmitted made Torvan's blood run cold. The Ravager swarm was massive beyond comprehension. Billions of creatures moved through space as a single living cloud, each one a nightmare of teeth and claws and hunger. They did not build ships, they did not need to. Their bodies had evolved to survive the vacuum, to travel between stars, to consume entire worlds and use that energy to breed more of their kind. Torvan had read about the Ravagers in historical records. He knew that humanity had fought them many times over the centuries. He knew that human soldiers had developed special weapons and tactics specifically designed to destroy these monsters. He knew that every victory against the Ravagers had cost humanity dearly. What he did not know, until this moment, was how terrifying it would be to face them without human help. The swarm was 3 days away from the Valari homeworld. Counselor Sereth burst into Torvan's chambers with panic written across his alien face. "We must contact the humans immediately. They are the only ones who can stop this. The humans have refused 17 diplomatic missions," Torvan replied, his voice hollow. They will not come. Then we are all going to die. The words hung in the air between them. Torvan ordered the Velari fleet to deploy. These were beautiful ships, designed over thousands of years by the finest Velari engineers. Their hulls were made of living crystal that could repair itself. Their weapons were elegant and precise. They had won countless ceremonial battles and fleet exercises, but they had never faced a real enemy. Not in 500 years. The humans had always been there to handle the actual fighting. Admiral Lasara commanded the Velari fleet. She was young for such a position. Only 300 years old. And she had earned her rank through political connections, rather than combat experience. As she watched the swarm approaching on her tactical display, she felt a terror she had never known before. All ships, form defensive line around the planet, she ordered. We will protect our homeworld or die trying. The battle began at dawn, local time. Velari ships fired their weapons with perfect precision. Crystal lances cut through space and struck the leading edge of the swarm. Thousands of Ravagers died in the opening moments, but the swarm kept coming. For every creature that fell, 10,000 more surged forward. They crashed against the Velari ships like waves against a shore. Their claws tore through living crystal hulls. Their jaws consumed crew members where they stood. Within 2 hours, Admiral Lasara's flagship was overrun. Her last transmission was a scream that cut off suddenly. Within 4 hours, half the Velari fleet was gone. Within 6 hours, only scattered survivors remained, fleeing in all directions, while the swarm continued its advance toward the planet below. The news reached Earth through channels that were not supposed to exist anymore. Human intelligence agents had maintained contacts throughout Council space, quietly observing, gathering information, waiting to see what would happen. President Nathan Cole sat in the Situation Room beneath the White House with his closest advisors. The holographic display showed the devastation in real time. Velari ships burning, the swarm growing larger as it consumed everything in its path. The beautiful crystalline planet waiting helplessly for destruction. 80% of their fleet is gone, reported Secretary of Defense Megan Harris. The swarm has barely been slowed. At current speed, it will reach the surface in 9 days. Civilian population? Nathan asked. 12 billion Velari on the homeworld alone, plus another 3 billion mixed species in the orbital habitats and nearby colonies. General Scott Palmer stood by the window with his hands clasped behind his back. He was a hard man who had spent 40 years in human military service. His grandfather had died fighting Ravagers. His father had died fighting Ravagers. His own daughter had nearly died, fighting Ravagers at the Battle of Corinth. We can stop them, Scott said quietly. Our fleets know how to kill these things. We have the weapons, the tactics, the experience. If we mobilize now, we can reach Velari space in 7 days. And why should we? Asked Secretary of State Paul Bennett. These are the same people who called us primitives, the same people who treated our soldiers like expendable tools, the same people who denied us basic respect for 300 years. The room fell silent. Nathan stood up and walked to the display. He watched a Velari escape pod get swallowed by a group of Ravagers. The people inside dying in ways too horrible to imagine. They are not soldiers, he said softly. They are civilians, families, children. They never voted to treat us badly. They never chose to insult us. They just want to live their lives and raise their children and grow old in peace. Their leaders made those choices for them, Paul argued. That is how civilization works. And does that mean the children should burn? No one had an answer. Nathan turned to face his advisors. Send a message to the Galactic Council. Tell them we are willing to discuss terms. We will meet their representatives at the neutral station. In Sector 7, General Palmer nodded slowly. I will begin preparing the fleet. Not yet. First we talk. I want to look them in the eye. I want them to understand exactly what they are asking for, and why we might give it to them. The message reached Torvan 12 hours later. He read it 7 times before he allowed himself to believe it was real. The humans were willing to talk. There was hope. The neutral station floated in the darkness between stars, far from any inhabited world. It had been built centuries ago, as a place where species who did not trust each other could meet safely. The halls were wide and empty, designed for beings of all shapes and sizes. The air was carefully balanced to suit 100 different physiologies. High Magistrate Torvin arrived first, accompanied by a small delegation of council representatives. They waited in the main conference chamber, a vast room with a transparent ceiling that showed the endless stars above. Torvan had never felt so small. The human delegation arrived exactly on time. Ambassador Laura Mitchell walked at the front, dressed in simple dark clothes that made no attempt at ceremony. Beside her came Admiral Daniel Carter, called out of retirement for this meeting. Behind them walked President Nathan Cole and several military officers whose faces showed the weight of difficult decisions. For a long moment, no one spoke. The two groups simply looked at each other across the polished floor. Laura was the one who broke the silence. High Magistrate. It has been a long time. Ambassador Mitchell. Torvan made the formal gesture of greeting. Thank you for agreeing to this meeting. We know that humanity owes us nothing. You are right, Laura replied. We owe you nothing. So let us begin by understanding exactly what you are asking. They sat at the great table in the center of the room. Torvan placed his hands flat on the surface. A Valari gesture of openness. The Ravager swarm will reach our homeworld in 8 days. Our fleet is destroyed. We have no way to stop them. 15 billion people will die unless humanity intervenes. We know, Daniel said. We have been watching. Then you know that you are our only hope. Human ships, human weapons, human soldiers are the only force in this galaxy that can defeat the Ravagers in time. Laura leaned forward. Before we discuss what humanity might do, I need to understand something. I have wondered about it for 30 years. And I think now is the time to ask. Torvin bowed his crystalline head. Ask, why did you treat us the way you did? From the very beginning, since the first human ships arrived in Council space, you looked down on us. You called us primitives. You used us as soldiers but refused us respect. Why? The question hung in the air. Torvan was silent for a long moment, and the colors shifting inside his crystalline body showed deep shame. Because we were afraid of you, he finally admitted. Laura raised an eyebrow. Afraid? Of a young species with primitive technology? You were young, yes. Your technology was crude when you arrived. But you learned so fast. Within a single century, you had mastered sciences that took us millennia to develop. Your ships became faster and stronger with every generation. Your weapons grew more devastating. Your population expanded to fill dozens of worlds. Torvan's voice grew quieter. And you fought. You fought like no species we had ever encountered. Where others retreated, you advanced. Where others surrendered, you died standing. You were terrifying in your determination and your fury. He looked directly at Laura. We told ourselves that keeping you beneath us would keep us safe. That if we gave you power and respect, you would eventually turn that terrifying strength against us. So we kept you as our protectors, but never as our partners. And now? Daniel asked. Now I understand how foolish we were. When humanity finally had enough of our cruelty, you did not conquer us. You did not destroy us. You simply walked away. And that was worse than any attack, because it showed us what we truly were without you. President Nathan Cole spoke for the first time. We received 17 diplomatic missions over the past year. Each one offered us money, trade privileges, territory. None of them offered what we actually wanted. What did you want? Torvin asked. To be seen as equals, to have our sacrifices honored, to be treated as partners instead of tools. Nathan shook his head. 300 years of blood and death, and all we ever asked for was respect. It would have cost you nothing. Counselor Sereth, who had remained silent until now, spoke up. We will give humanity a permanent seat on the High Council. Full voting rights. Recognition as equals in all matters. We always were equals, Daniel replied quietly. You just refused to see it. The room fell silent again. Through the transparent ceiling, distant stars glittered like cold diamonds. Laura finally stood up from her chair. We are not here for revenge. We are not here to gloat or to extract payment for past wrongs. Those things would make us no better than you were. She walked to the window and looked out at the vast darkness of space. But we are also not going to pretend that everything is fine. Your people treated us terribly for centuries. Our people died in the millions defending those who mocked us. We cannot simply forget that. Oh, we're due. I'll not simply forget that. She turned back to face the council delegation. So here is what will happen. We will save your people. We will fight the Ravagers, and we will destroy them. Because that is who we are. We do not let innocent people die because their leaders were cruel to us. Torvin's body flickered with deep blue light, the Valari expression of overwhelming gratitude. And in return, you will remember this moment. Every time some young species arrives at your council, asking only for a place at the table, you will remember how it felt to be helpless. You will remember that the primitives you dismissed were the only ones who came to save you. Daniel Carter rose to his feet, his old bones protesting after so many years of retirement. I will lead the fleet personally. One more time. Laura looked at him with concern. Daniel, you do not have to do this. Yes, I do. My grandfather fought Ravagers. My father fought Ravagers. I have fought them more times than I can count. If humanity is going to bleed for these people one more time, I want to be there, leading from the front. He turned to Torvan. Get your surviving ships and civilian vessels away from the combat zone. Evacuate anyone who can be evacuated. When my fleet arrives, things are going to get very loud and very dangerous. Torvan made a deep bow. How can we ever repay what you are about to do? Daniel looked at him with eyes that had seen too many friends die. By being better. By learning from this. By never treating another species the way you treated us. He paused at the door. And by remembering the names of the humans who will die saving you. That is all we have ever asked. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace like thunder breaking across a silent sky. 300 warships emerged from the void in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming with weapons designed over centuries specifically to kill Ravagers. At the center of the formation flew the Dreadnought Constellation, the most powerful vessel humanity had ever built. On its bridge stood Admiral Daniel Carter, surrounded by officers who had trained their entire lives for exactly this moment. Between the fleet and the planet hung the Ravager swarm. Billions of creatures filled the void, their bodies blocking out the stars behind them. Each one was a nightmare-given form, a thing of teeth and claws and endless hunger that existed only to consume and reproduce. Daniel looked at the swarm without fear. He had fought these monsters more times than he could remember. He knew their patterns, their weaknesses, their mindless determination. Most importantly, he knew they could be killed. All ships, this is Admiral Carter, he announced over the fleet channel. His voice was calm and steady. We are not here for medals or glory. We are not here because someone asked nicely. We are here because somewhere down on that planet, children are looking up at the sky, wondering if monsters are going to take everything they love. He paused and took a breath. Let us make sure that does not happen. All ships, engage. The human fleet surged forward like a wave of fire. Plasma cannons opened up first, sending lances of superheated matter into the swarm. Where each lance struck, thousands of Ravagers vaporized instantly. Graviton beams followed, creating zones of crushing gravity that tore swarm clusters apart. Nuclear torpedoes launched in waves, their explosions creating temporary suns in the darkness. But the swarm fought back. Billions of creatures surged toward the human ships with mindless fury. They crashed against shields and hulls like living missiles. Their claws could tear through armor plating, their acid could dissolve steel. For every million that died, 10 million more pressed forward. On the bridge of the constellation, alarms screamed constantly. Lieutenant Katie Simmons called out coordinates and casualty reports, while Commander Eric Dunn managed the point defense systems. The ship shuddered as Ravagers impacted against its shields. The Defiance is reporting heavy damage, Katie announced. They have Ravagers boarding through multiple breaches. Daniel watched the tactical display. The Defiance was holding a crucial position on the left flank. If it fell, the swarm would pour through the gap. Tell Captain Ryan Hayes to fall back and regroup. He says they cannot disengage. Their engines are gone. They are surrounded. Daniel closed his eyes for a brief moment. He had known Ryan for 20 years. The man had 3 children waiting for him back on Earth. He was a good officer and a better friend. Put him through. Ryan's face appeared on the display. He was bleeding from a cut on his forehead, and smoke filled the air behind him. But his voice was steady. "Admiral, my ship is done. We have maybe 10 minutes before they break through to engineering. I am going to overload the reactor core. Should take a good chunk of the swarm with us. Ryan, there has to be another way." "There is not, and we both know it." Ryan managed a tired smile. "Tell my kids their dad went out fighting. Tell them I was not afraid." The communication cut off. A few minutes later, the Defiance exploded in a flash of light, so bright, it temporarily overwhelmed the sensors. When the display cleared, there was a hole in the swarm where 17 million Ravagers had been. The battle raged on. Hour after hour, human ships fought with everything they had. Destroyers weaved through the swarm, their guns blazing constantly. Cruisers formed defensive lines around damaged vessels. Carriers launched wave after wave of fighters that dove into the swarm and clawed their way back out. By hour 10, humanity had lost 60 ships. The swarm had lost over 1 billion creatures. But still, they kept coming. By hour 15, the number rose to 100 ships lost. The surviving vessels were running low on ammunition. Crews had been fighting without rest since the battle began. Fatigue was becoming as dangerous as the enemy. Daniel stood at his command post with blood on his uniform from a minor wound. His voice was hoarse from hours of shouting orders. But he did not sit down. He did not rest. He refused to show weakness while his people were dying. At hour 16, the sensor officer shouted something that made everyone freeze. "Admiral, we have located the swarm coordinator. Bearing 073, distance 40,000 kilometers. The coordinator was the key to everything. It was the creature that bound the swarm together, that gave direction to billions of mindless monsters. Kill it, and the swarm would fragment into chaos." Daniel made the only decision he could. "All ships, concentrate fire on bearing 073. Everything we have left, now." The remaining human ships turned as one. Weapons that had been firing in all directions suddenly focused on a single point. Plasma and graviton and nuclear fire converged on the coordinator in a storm of destruction that burned brighter than the local sun. The coordinator died, and with it died the swarm's unity. In an instant, billions of Ravagers lost their connection to each other. They stopped working together and began behaving as individuals, confused and disorganized. Some continued attacking, others fled into deep space. Many simply stopped moving, drifting helplessly without the coordinator's guidance. It took another 3 hours to mop up the remaining threats, but the battle was effectively over. When the last Ravager was confirmed destroyed, silence fell across the fleet. Then, slowly, cheers began to spread from ship to ship. Exhausted crews embraced each other. Soldiers who had been certain they would die found themselves still alive. On the surface of Valari Prime, 15 billion people looked up at the sky and saw human ships where death had been before. Of the 300 vessels that had entered the battle, 112 remained. 24,000 human soldiers had given their lives. Their names would be recorded and honored forever. High Magistrate Torvin's voice came across the communication channel. "Admiral Carter, there are no words sufficient to express what we feel. You have saved our entire civilization." Daniel Carter looked out at the planet below, at the crystalline cities that still stood because his people had bled for them. "Honor the dead," he said quietly. "Remember their names. Learn from this. And the next time some young species comes before your council, asking only for respect, remember that the primitives you mocked were the only ones willing to save you." 1 year later, humanity was granted a permanent seat on the Galactic Council. Laura Mitchell accepted the position and immediately began working to ensure that no other species would ever be treated the way humanity had been. Daniel Carter returned to his farm in Montana. He spent his remaining years in peace, surrounded by family, watching the stars he had defended one final time. And across the galaxy, the story of humanity's sacrifice spread to every corner of known space. It became a lesson taught to children of 100 species, a reminder that strength without wisdom is dangerous, but wisdom without compassion is meaningless, and that, sometimes, the quietest departure speaks louder than any words ever could.